Your heart, Lord, change our heart. You're living in a lawful way. Be mindful of what you say. Be sincere when you pray. Today could be your last day. Bear each other no malice. Greed and faith can coexist in the same heart.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Welcome to another live episode of Gems of the Heart, where we look more deeply into our hearts. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to purify our hearts, this heart, this amazing part of our body, that unless it's pure, a person would not enter Jannah unless it's perfectly pure. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran clearly about Ibrahim alayhi salam. وَلَا تُخْزِنِي يَوْمَ يُبْعَثُونَ يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. In a day that nor wealth or children or offspring will benefit the person except the ones that come in the day of judgment with a pure and a sound heart. So this is basically such an important job in our life. We should not leave and ignore our hearts when the heart is not something that we see physically. And therefore we have to be extremely careful, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it clear in the Quran and in the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam how to purify our hearts. And the hearts has basically matters of belief in it. We have to believe in the right way. We have to do certain actions by our hearts purely, sincerely for the sake of Allah. We have to have pure intentions, determination. We have to have the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to have patience and being pleased with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to have that level of submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with our hearts. Certainty in the rewards of Allah. Many things to be done. And therefore, the physical actions becomes the easiest things ever if a person's heart is established on what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. So this is what we're trying to really educate ourselves, and we try to mention what is important for us to purify our hearts. And we've been throughout so many episodes still in the first aspect of matters of belief and how that can purify our hearts. Because without the proper and sound belief, nothing would benefit the person. If a person has a corrupted aqidah, a corrupted matter of belief, and he is the best in conduct and the best in concern towards others and so on and so forth, his heart is full of filth. Why? Because of the corruption to one's belief. So the belief and the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and all of that, this is the foundation for our hearts to be purified. And then it's adorned and purified with all kinds of obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, acts of worship, manners, and so on and so forth. And we've been talking about the pillars of Al-Iman, and the first pillar to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what we've been discussing for many, many episodes. And we start talking about the names and attributes of Allah. But once we started, we couldn't really leave the subject unless we talk as much as we can about the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Such a beautiful subject. And there's nothing more purifying to our hearts than to talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names and attributes. And how these names and attributes of Allah should wash and purify our hearts, because we would see how we are as human beings. We are nothing. We have no power whatsoever. We have nothing, really nothing, literally nothing, except from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's the creator of all things, and we are things. We are creation of Allah. So anything that we have is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَا بِكُم مِّن نِعْمَةٍ فَمِنَ اللَّهِ. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, there is no ni'mah, there is no bounty, whether it's small or big, unless it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So then, we have to really see this in ourselves and then witness the power of Allah and get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names and attributes. Inshallah, in this episode, very briefly, we'll talk about one of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is As-Sayyid. As-Sayyid, and this is a name that many of the Muslims that are familiar with, and they see that in the names even of some of the human beings. They call themselves As-Sayyid or Sayyid and so on. And what's the rulings with regards to this? But first of all, this is As-Sayyid is one of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala according to the correct opinion, and that's mentioned in an authentic hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. It's not mentioned in the Quran that this is the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it's mentioned in the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and a few hadith that talks about this, and one of which is a famous hadith, the hadith of Mutarrif ibn Abdullah radiallahu an, where the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, when his father said that he went to a delegation of the Wafd of Bani Amir, and this is a famous hadith, and how they went to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and they were praising the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and they said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Anta Sayyiduna, you are our Sayyid. But first of all, what does Sayyid means? Sayyid is basically the master, the owner of things, is the one that is basically in charge of all things, that people return all of their affairs to him. Everything that they have, refers to him, and so on. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator of all things. He's the Sayyid. He's the master of the universe, subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's the creator, everything and everyone is in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why some said that the meaning of As-Samad in Surah Qul Allahu Ahad, one of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, As-Samad means As-Sayyid, the one in charge, the one that everybody is in need of him, the one that everyone, all of the creation of Allah, would not sustain their lives without the creator of the heavens and the earth. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is As-Sayyid. So here, first of all, going back to the hadith, where they said to the Prophet ﷺ, Anta Sayyiduna, you are our Sayyid. And when it's referring to the human beings, they mean by this, you are our chief. You're the one that is in charge of us. We always have to return to you for decisions, for things of that nature, and for your opinions, and so on. So there's nothing wrong with that in that concept and that understanding. But still the Prophet ﷺ said to them to teach them. He said, As-Sayyid, Allahu Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. As-Sayyid is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, exalted is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he directed them, and he said to them that As-Sayyid, in the absolute sense, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So no one of the human beings have the meaning of a Sayyid in the absolute sense. They can have something related to their other fellow human beings. And that's one of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that human beings can share the same name according to their human power and means and so on, which is all deficient, of course. Like, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ar-Rahim. He's the most merciful subhanahu wa ta'ala. Human beings, they need to have mercy in them towards one another. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Kareem. He is the most generous subhanahu wa ta'ala. Human beings, they need to have generosity, but according to their human capacity, of course, and nothing is the like of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the same thing, the Sayyid, people are chiefs to one another. Some of them are in charge, some of them people would obey them, and so on. And there are rules to govern that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is As-Sayyid in the absolute sense, because He's the creator, He's the sustainer, He's the owner of all things. So when they said that to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, the Prophet ﷺ said to them, As-Sayyidu Allahu Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, and they said, وَأَفْضَلُنَا فَضْلًا وَأَعْظَمُنَا طَوَلًا. That means He's the best of us, He's the best in power, and so on. So the Prophet ﷺ said, قُولُوا بِقَوْلِكُمْ أَوْ بَعْضِ قَوْلِكُمْ وَلَا يَسْتَجْرِيَنَّكُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ, which says, say whatever you say, and do not let the shaitan take you or lead you astray. Be careful what you say things. Do not bring close what's with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what's for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to what's for the human beings. And as if you probably heard this many times, but this is very crucial. One of the miseries of the human beings, they don't separate between what's with Allah, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and what's for the human beings. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nothing is the like of Him. His names and attributes and actions and so on. Therefore, He's the only one to be worshipped. Human beings, even the best of all of the human beings, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the best man ever walked on the face of earth. But he's not divine. He's not someone that is to be worshipped. He is a human being, the best of all of the human being. We need to have that separation very clearly. He's the one to be followed, yes. But the one that is the owner of all things, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why the Prophet ﷺ forbade them to teach them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is As-Sayyid, even though when they said Anta Sayyiduna, it does not mean anything wrong if it's understood in the right way. You are our chief or our master, meaning from the human perspective, you are in charge of us. That's why there's nothing wrong with someone calling someone that he is the Sayyid of such, not in the absolute sense. The one in the absolute sense is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing is the like of Allah. As-Sayyid, Alif Lam, that means he's the one that is given this siyada and this ownership and master of all the universes is only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But something being attached to some of the creation of Allah or some of the human beings, there is nothing wrong with that, because human beings, they can of course be in charge of one another. But as you see, the difference between both is, if it's a human being and he's the Sayyid of his people, he's in charge, he's the chief of his people, right? The obedience is not an absolute one. Why? Because he's a human being. And as a rule, لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الخالق. There is no obedience to any makhluk, to any of the creation of Allah, when it comes to the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one is to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to obey a human being. This is never permissible, no matter how big this human being is. If he is the biggest leader, if he is the most powerful of all of the human beings, if he ordered the people to do the smallest sin ever, sin meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade the sin. So who is on the face of earth to be obeyed in the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is something that should be already well established in the lives and the hearts of the believers. And how this can really pollute one's heart if a person has the seed of this corruption in the heart, that a person would have in his heart, even if he didn't do the action yet, that there is some human being, a human being in his life, that he would dare, that he would obey him in disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is something that should be purified completely from the hearts of the believers. Meaning that if a person fell into the sin, obeyed, maybe listened to his boss when he ordered him to do a sin, or listened to his wife, or the wife listened to the husband, or whatever there is, it might be a moment of weakness and a person committed the sin and repents to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it's not just that sin that has been committed. We need to go deeper and to see what's in our hearts. Do we have this seed of impurity in our hearts that can corrupt our hearts? That we have the potential, basically, in there, that we are willing to obey other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's just one or the opposite. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders us, for example, to pray a specific salah at a specific time. And a human being comes, whether it's the president of the world or whatever there is, or the king of all the kings on the face of earth, it doesn't matter. And they say, for example, he would say, no prayer between these two times, for example. Who are the one that we're supposed to obey? Of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade us from committing zina, from drinking wine, from backbiting, from whatever sins are, it's all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And someone comes and says, you can drink, you can commit this and you can commit that. Who are we going to obey? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the human beings? This is a very practical matter that can really pollute our hearts. Many people, they face many different things in their jobs, and the matter should be very easy for them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a Sayyid. He's the owner of all things. He's the master. He is the chief of all things. And therefore, he is the one to be obeyed in the absolute sense. If a person do this, everything else will be in place in our life. You will have so much tranquility and peace and happiness and goodness when the obedience is the absolute one to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't mean that we rebel or we're against being obedient to other human beings. Yes, of course we have to be obedient to those who are in charge of us, but with the condition, only in matters that is ma'ruf, matters of goodness, not to obey them in the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is a very important athar or outcome as a result of this name, of course, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is also that comes with the meaning of the owner of all things. The owner of all things is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as you heard, this is something that did not come in the Quran, but in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And one of the things that Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah he said in his beautiful Nuniyya that about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَهُوَ الْإِلَهُ السَّيِّدُ الصَّمَدُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-ilah, the one to be worshipped. As-Sayyid al-Samad, As-Sayyid, the master. As-Samad, the one that everything is in need of him subhanahu wa ta'ala. الَّذِي صَمَدَتْ إِلَيْهِ الْخَلْقُ بِالْإِذْعَانِ. The one that the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there in state of submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the most perfect subhanahu wa ta'ala, and nothing is the like of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called some of his prophets in the Quran as Sayyid, one of which is Yahya alayhi salam, that he said Sayyidan wa Hasuran wa Nabiyyan min as-Salihin, that Yahya is a Sayyid. That means he's a Sayyid to his people, as we said before. That means he's a chief over his people, not in the absolute sense. So this is something that once it becomes clear, then it's easy to understand and to easy to even purify our hearts accordingly, with that meaning of what is to be conditionally submitting ourselves to, and what is to be unconditional submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a Sayyid. One of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, even though as we heard in this hadith earlier, that he said to the people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a Sayyid, he said about himself alayhi salatu wasalam, أنا سيد ولد آدم ولا فخر. I am the Sayyid of the sons of Adam, and there's no pride in this, meaning it's not something that is being said out of arrogance, because the Prophet ﷺ is the most humble of all the human beings. But this is a revelation from Allah. He has to convey the revelation from Allah that he alayhi salatu wasalam is basically the chief of all of the human beings in the Day of Judgment. Nobody will be more superior than him in the Day of Judgment. Everybody will look up to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. There is the intercession or the shafa'ah that the Prophet ﷺ would have to all of the humanity for the reckoning to start, and that's why, because he is the most or the best of all of the human being, and that's what he said alayhi salatu wasalam, أنا سيد ولد آدم ولا فخر. And that again, it's not in the absolute sense. This is something that is given to the Prophet ﷺ by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not something that is attained by the Prophet ﷺ on his own, but rather from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why he said ولا فخر. That means this virtue that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he did not earn it himself. This is not a decision that the Prophet ﷺ made for himself, but rather this is the level of honor that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So that's why it's important to understand it in this proper way. And also, as we hear the statement of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, that when he said in the hadith, As-Sayyidullahu tabaraka wa ta'ala, As-Sayyid is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is As-Sayyid. And if we look into our life, and as we mentioned, one of the example is the issue of the submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we would find many things in our life that we can benefit from learning about this name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are in need in this life as human beings to have someone in charge of us. And this is, without this, then people would live in chaos. And this is how the life of the human beings are governed. And that's why observing the rights of those who are in charge is a very important part in matters of the religion. And therefore a Muslim should see that very clearly. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had appointed some to be in charge or having some superiority over others, is not to abuse them, is not to manipulate them, but rather for the life to go on in such a perfect way. Like, for example, there's a ruler and he governs his sovereignty with justice and so on, with the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there is a person being at home, meaning the husband, for example, the father, being in charge of the household. He is the one that is chief, the chief of the house. And this has to be very clear, and that's one of the problems that we face in families today, and even among many of the Muslims' families, is because they follow the ways of others, and they don't observe these etiquettes and manners that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala established this responsibility upon them. So one of which, for example, who is in charge of the household? The man is in charge of the household. He is the one that is the chief of the household. What's that mean? That means he's the one that makes the decisions. He's the one that is responsible for everything that happens in the household. And without this to be clear in the household, there's a problem. Imagine a country is being governed without any authority whatsoever. People would take matters in their own hands, and that would cause so much chaos. And the same thing with families. Whether it comes to the wife and the children, the husband is in charge. He's not someone that is treating them in just way. He does not take his opinion and that's it. He takes their opinions and he discusses with them, and he is lenient, and he treats them with all kinds of kindness, and he take their opinion if it's the best opinion, and so on and so forth, and even make them feel that they are clearly part of this. But at the end, right, he's in charge. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask him in the day of resurrection. And if there is no clear matter like this, then things can cause so much disruption to the unit of the family and to the harmony of it, and so on. So this is in the household, this is in companies, this is in governments, this is in cities, whatever there is, masajid. And that's why we have to respect that. And people should not be in dispute when it comes to matters that is not against the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Many people, they get upset because the one in charge, for example, we make a decision, and this decision, it's something that they don't like, or they don't feel it's the right decision. If it's not something haram, then people still have to have the hearts together, and they should understand and realize that someone is in charge. And this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us, and this is how the Prophet ﷺ ordered the companions radiallahu anhum to be obedient and to listen and to obey in matters of the ma'ruf, even if the one in charge of you is an Abyssinian slave, as he said alayhi salatu wassalam. So this is a very important concept, but again, this is the justice and the balance in the life of the believers, that there is no obedience whatsoever if the ones in charge would order them to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Something that we need to raise our children to understand, that even their own parents, if they would order them to do something haram, something that is not permissible, they have to refuse with all kinds of goodness and manners and behavior and so on. But because the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the absolute one, and the same thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a Sayyid in the absolute sense. And everyone else, all of the human beings, they are basically towards one another, and they are become fitna, they become test towards one another because of this matter of a siyada, or those who are in charge. And many people, they would fight over it, and that's another thing, that we are not ordered religiously to go after power, because this is something that is one person is to be given this, and he will be responsible for those who are under him. So a person should not compete for positions by being a president of a place or running for it or whatever there is, but rather a person should be given the one that has the qualities of it, it should be given to him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again is a Sayyid, and one of the meanings of a Sayyid is Ar-Rabb, is the Lord. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being the Lord, being the creator of the heavens and earth, being the one in charge of everything. He's the owner of all things. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ar-Rabb, He is the Lord of the Alameen. And therefore, when we look into that meaning and you link it to the meaning of a Sayyid, and that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, things will fall into place. So do not seek provisions from other than Allah, because they are not the Sayyid, they are not the ones that are the owners of things. They are basically creation of Allah. They are in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are themselves to be provided for. So how can you seek provisions from someone that is being provided for? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the owner of all things. So whatever we have in our own hands, there are rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be observed, like one of which the zakah, to learn the zakah, to learn the obligatory charity, so that no matter how much wealth you have, there's a portion of it, even the entire wealth, is all belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered us to give all of our wealth to the poor and the needy, if that's the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do we have anything or any say in it whatsoever? We shouldn't. We are slaves of Allah. He is the Sayyid. He is the owner of all things. So therefore, a person should give it willingly. He should give it willingly for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because he understands that he is owned by Allah. The provider is Allah. So he has the rights over our own wealth and our own lives and so on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful. He did not ask us to give all of our wealth, but rather to give a very small portion of it. So you can see how evil it is for those who would withhold the small portion of zakah, for example, out of the greed that they have in themselves, when it's a greed about something that they don't have the absolute ownership of it. We'll continue with that inshallah ta'ala, and more examples of the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as Sayyid right after the break. So stay with us and we'll be right back inshallah ta'ala with your phone calls.
Change your heart, Lord, change our heart.
Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ba'd. Welcome back, and with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as Sayyid, and how can that really purify our hearts, and with the meaning of this word. And one of the meanings of it is that He's the owner of all things, He's the chief of the master of the universe, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ar-Rabb, He is the Lord of this universe. And the effect of that, of course, clearly in our hearts. And we mentioned some of the examples that we need to really live our life according to this, with the certainty in the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how that affect our hearts when we would obey other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He is the master of the universe, when everything shall return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The one that has the absolute obedience is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The one that has the absolute master of all things is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that how that the word Sayyid can be referred to someone in charge of something, the chief of his tribe, the chief of his people. There's nothing wrong with that, but that person does not have the absolute sense of things. Why? Because his obedience is always conditioned to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a Sayyid. One of the things that people might ask about this is, since the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, Ana Sayyidu waladi Adam wala fakhr, I am the chief of the sons of Adam and there's no pride. And we talked about that before, the break, and how that this is true, because the Prophet ﷺ said that, and he is the one that has been given this by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it doesn't mean that people, for example, would worship the Prophet ﷺ, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a Sayyid in the absolute sense. But people, can they say, for example, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad? Can we say Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad? So to use the word Sayyidina Muhammad, and Prophet ﷺ is Sayyidina, of course. He is our master, our chief, and he is sallallahu alayhi wasallam, is the one to be followed alayhi salatu wasallam. But to be careful, we can say this in the general terms of things. Person speaking in a khutbah or in a lecture or in general, there's nothing wrong with that. This is basically what it is. But to say it in the adhan, for example, right? Can someone say in the adhan, instead of saying Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, he said Ashhadu anna Sayyidana Muhammad Rasulullah. Can a person say that? The mu'adhin, can he say this in the adhan? I think it's very obvious. Anybody that is listening to this, you'd say, of course not. There's no way anyone can say this in the adhan. This is not permissible. Why is that? Even though the Prophet ﷺ is Sayyiduna, he is our chief, of course. He's the one that is in charge of our affairs, meaning that we follow him alayhi salatu wasalam. And the answer very simply is that this is not the words of the adhan. The words of the adhan that was taught to Bilal radiallahu anhu, and the Prophet ﷺ taught it to the companions radiallahu anhum, and the action has been established since then till the day of judgment, is to say Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. And that is basically, it shows the ibadah. We do things according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to the Prophet ﷺ. So even if we like a statement, right, we do not add or take away anything from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already established for us in matters of the deen. So the same thing, for example, in saying that in the tashahhud, when a person say Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad, can a person say Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, and so on? Many people, they say this. The same thing that we said in the adhan should be also applied when we are saying the tashahhud. Did the Prophet ﷺ teach the companions radiallahu anhum to say this in the tashahhud? He taught them to say Allahumma salli ala Muhammad and so on. So we should follow what the Prophet ﷺ taught them to do. The same way we say in the adhan, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, the same way a person should say the salah on the Prophet ﷺ in the salah, the way that we have been taught to say it. But again, as we said, in general terms, a person is saying that in speech, and is talking, saying the Prophet ﷺ, Sayyiduna Muhammad. Of course, the Prophet ﷺ is Sayyiduna, and he's Sayyidu waladi Adam. He is the chief of all mankind. But to be careful with the the words that are used in ibadah and dhikr and so on, not to change these ones and to keep it only according to what the Prophet ﷺ had said to us, because this is revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Prophet ﷺ used that word in many of the occasions. When in the story of Sa'd ibn Mu'adh radiallahu anhu, when he was brought to give the judgment with regards to his people of Bani Qurayza, when he came, the Prophet ﷺ, he said to the companions radiallahu anhum, قُومُوا إِلَى سَيِّدِكُمْ, stand up for your Sayyid, for Sayyidikum, for your Sayyid, referring to Sa'd ibn Mu'adh radiallahu anhu. So this is absolutely permissible because he is their chief. Linguistically, this is what it means. So again, what is forbidden is where the Prophet ﷺ said, as we heard in the hadith earlier, As-Sayyidullah tabaraka wa ta'ala, the Sayyid is Allah. This is in the absolute sense. That's why it's attached to it, your chief or the one in charge of you and so on. Also, the Prophet ﷺ said about his son or his grandson, Al-Hasan. But before we continue with that, we have a phone call from Muhammad from Oman. Assalamu alaikum. Please go ahead. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, Muhammad.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you, Sheikh?
Alhamdulillah, everything is good. Inshallah. Go ahead, inshallah, sister.
My question, Sheikh, is about Quran. Quran al-Fajr, I understand, is going to be our witness the day of judgment. Now, when they say the Quran al-Fajr, is that including before Salat al-Fajr? Or it's only in the Salat al-Fajr? Or also including Ba'da Salat al-Fajr? I mean, Ba'da Salat, although you are still in the Fajr.
Sure, inshallah. Sure, inshallah. Anything else, inshallah?
That's all for today. Jazakallah khair.
May Allah reward you. Barakallah feek. Answering this question, and we continue, inshallah ta'ala, with the subject. The sister is asking about Quran al-Fajr, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that in the Quran. Quran al-Fajr, inna Quran al-Fajr kana mashhuda. That the Quran or the Fajr is mashhud. That means it's witnessed by the angels. What is the meaning of Quran al-Fajr? Quran al-Fajr, according to how the ulama explain this and according to the actions of the Prophet ﷺ, is the Quran recited in Salatul Fajr. The Quran that is actually recited in Salatul Fajr by the Imam, or if in case of a woman praying alone, the Quran that is recited in Salatul Fajr. Not the Quran recited before Salatul Fajr or after Salatul Fajr. So what is being witnessed is basically the Salah. Salatul Fajr itself is a Salah that is being witnessed. And the Prophet ﷺ said in the authentic hadith that the angels, they come down in Salatul Fajr and Salatul Asr. يَتَنَاوَبُونَ عَلَيْكُمْ مَلَائِكَةٌ بِاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ. That the angels, they take turns or shifts for you in the day and the night. So they meet in Salatul Fajr and they meet in Salatul Asr. So the angels of the night, they ascend at Salatul Fajr, and those who of the day, they come down in Salatul Fajr, and the same thing with Salatul Asr. So this Salatul Fajr is Salah that is being witnessed by the angels, and the Quran recited in it is such a virtuous thing, and that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he would recite more Quran in Salatul Fajr than in any other Salah. And it was the norm of the Prophet ﷺ that he would lead the Salatul Fajr with the like of a 60 verses, 60 ayah, 60 verses, or the like of that, the lengthy Salah of Salatul Fajr. The Prophet ﷺ would lead the people with Salatul Fajr in such a way because the Quran that is being recited is being witnessed, and therefore someone going to the masjid to listen to the Quran in the Salah, in Salatul Fajr from the Imam, and to stand behind the Imam in the Salah and to focus on the Quran recited in Salatul Fajr is an amazing act of worship. It has a great effect in our hearts, has a great effect in our steadfastness upon the deen of Allah, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praised this act, especially when it comes to Salatul Fajr. But if a person recites Quran before Fajr, a person reciting Quran after Fajr, this is absolutely fine. And a person should have his own wird, a portion of the Quran that is recited every day. And if it's the best time, which is usually one of the best times, is in the early morning when there's not too much distractions yet, a person would recite a portion of the Quran, but with the condition that a person would say the adhkar that has been reported from the Prophet ﷺ that he used to say in the morning and in the evening. So you start first with the adhkar of as-sabah, the morning adhkar after Salatul Fajr, and then follow that with the recitation of the Quran. This is all virtuous deeds, especially if a person sits in the masjid in the sunrise and prays the 2 rak'ah and so on. But with the ayah specifically, it's with regards to the Quran recited during the salah. Going back to the name As-Sayyid, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is As-Sayyid, and how the Prophet ﷺ, when he said about his grandson Al-Hasan ibn Ali radiallahu anhuma, he said, Inna ibni hada Sayyid. My son, this particular one is a Sayyid. That means he is a chief. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he would rectify a situation between two major portion of population of people by my son. That means Al-Hasan will be the reason for rectifying a dispute between two major parties. And this was the case after the Prophet ﷺ and the fitna, or this tribulation that happened at the time of the companions radiallahu anhum, was resolved by Al-Hasan radiallahu anhu, as the Prophet ﷺ said. So he said that he is Sayyid, but not as Sayyid, not in the absolute sense, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is as Sayyid, right? And Al-Hasan radiallahu anhu is Sayyid, someone that is chief. It's like when you say someone is the president, someone is the king, and so on. And again, the best of all of the human beings and the chief of them, of the human beings, is the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. So then it's again to put things in the perspective. But then going back to the hadith that we mentioned earlier, why did the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam tell them when they said Anta Sayyiduna? They did not say anything wrong. You are our Sayyid. He said As-Sayyidullahu tabaraka wa ta'ala. As-Sayyid is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, exalted is He subhanahu wa ta'ala, to encourage them to have tawadu', to encourage them to have humbleness, and to have the fear of arrogance, and not to let words take the person into excessiveness or extremism. Because something like this can lead a person to, for example, invoke the Prophet ﷺ and make dua to the Prophet ﷺ instead of making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's why the Prophet ﷺ would make the matter very clear. As, for example, when the Prophet ﷺ, a man came to him and he said to him, Masha Allah wa shit, if Allah will and you will. The Prophet ﷺ got so angry. And he said, Aja'altani lillahi niddan, you made me a partner with Allah. Say Masha Allah wahda. Say what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will alone. So to put things in the right perspective, even though the man might meant what is right, but to make sure that the words that comes out of our mouth is correct. And that's another benefit. We have to see the difference between as-Sayyid is alif lam, then Sayyid. And referring as-Sayyid to a human being or a tribe or a group of people and so on makes a major difference. And that's why we have to be careful what we say. We have to make sure that what we say is correct, and not to be led astray by just saying things without understanding what we're saying. So therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is as-Sayyid. And when we reflect more upon this name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how that it has a benefit in every single aspect of our life, whether it's an ownership, we said, whether it's matters of provisions, rulings, right, and the obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the absolute sense, whether it's families, the ones in charge, the one in charge of our families, the orders of Allah, and to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whether it's in our transactions, buying and selling, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the owner of all things, and a person put forward in his heart his purity, his sincerity towards others. Why not love for your brother what you love for your own self? How is that related to the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a Sayyid? Love for your brother what you love for your own self. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a Sayyid. He's the one in charge of all things. So whether you have greed or not, it's not going to change anything. It's not going, when you're greedy, when a person is greedy, it doesn't mean that he would make more money. If a person doesn't love for his brother what he loves for his own self, if he doesn't do that, it's not going to make him better than his brother, or in a more fortune, whatever there is. It's not going to, because everything is owned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if a person put forward what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would reward them great rewards. and He would bless his life and actions and so on. So this is a very important thing. When a person, for example, Hajj is coming soon, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it easy for everyone that wants to go make Hajj. Making Hajj is such an important thing in our life, especially if it's the obligatory one and it's mandatory once in lifetime. Sometimes people, they have the means to go for Hajj, but they have these obstacles, or they make their own obstacles in their life, or they think, oh no, I need to postpone it to next year or the year after. And so when they have the means now to go for Hajj. Some people, they have the notion that Hajj is only to be done when you retire. Something that after you retire, because then you don't have much financial responsibilities. Yes, of course, a person has to take care of his family and debt and so on and so forth. If a person has the means to go for Hajj, why not? It is not permissible to delay it if you have the means and you have what's left behind for your family to take care of them till you come back. But to rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not to think that everything is physical and that everything we have to calculate it with a pen and a pencil and a paper, that everything has to be clear and added and so on. No, there's the element of the barakah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He's the owner of all things. So when a person put forward what pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless him. And that's why the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, تابعوا بين الحج والعمرة فإنهما ينفيان الفقر كما ينفي الكير خبث الحديد. That means follow the Umrah with Hajj and follow the Hajj with Umrah like this, because it takes away poverty the same way the fire takes away the impurities of the steel or the iron. So this is what Al-Hajj and Umrah does to the people. Opposite to what people might think, it takes away my money. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to the Prophet ﷺ that it's the opposite, because Allah is a Sayyid, He's the owner of all things. So again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is the absolute Sayyid, the chief, the master, the owner of all things. And as we heard, this is something mentioned, stated by the Prophet ﷺ, but it's okay to mention this with regards to a human being, referred to a tribe or to people and so on. But the effect of that in our life and how that purify our hearts, this is something that is very important for us when it comes to matters of obedience, provisions, ownership, everything in our life. Let our wealth and our life and our decisions and everything based on the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a Sayyid, is the chief, is the master of all things, so that we submit ourselves to Allah following the way of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring this reality in our life and to make us among those who are blessed with the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we are thankful for those who participated in the program. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Change your heart, Lord, change our heart. You're living in a lawful way. Be mindful of what you say. Be sincere when you pray. Today could be your last day. Bear each other, no malice. Greed and faith can't coexist.